Hello everyone, this is Jarek Defiler, and welcome to the next video of my series, Games for Non-Gamers, the FPS genre. The last couple videos we went over the game settings, video settings, graphical settings, advanced settings, music settings, sound settings, etc. of Doom 2016. So now that that's all done, all the boring stuff's out of the way, we're going to be getting to the more interesting stuff, such as combat, movement, and controls. And that's what we're going to be looking at today, mainly the movement and controls of Doom 2016. But before that, a word from our sponsors. Me! Go watch my other videos. Alright, now that that's done with, we are going to be first looking at what we call in the gaming community WASD. That's going to be W-A-S-D. What WASD is that basically it's the default movement keys for any FPS game or even third-person shooter games or just third-person player games in general. It could be RPGs, it could be melee games like Chivalry, it could be anything. Any kind of game where you are directly controlling generally one character in a first or third-person setting, WASD is going to be your default keys for movement, usually. I mean, it just depends on the game, but generally it's going to be that. If we go to the key bindings option here under the mouse and keyboard settings, you'll see right here, this is just default. I didn't change any of this stuff. And it's good to get familiar with this entire menu, like I mentioned before in a previous video, because this is going to be pretty similar to most first-person or even third-person games. And it's all, we might go over this in detail, but it's all self-explanatory, most of this stuff. So get familiar with this menu, but for now you just want to know that WSAD or WASD is going to be your default movement functions for all first-person and third-person games, usually. But keep in mind, I am talking about hand placement for a right-handed player, and generally even left-handed players play like this. Some of my friends do. But for left-handers, they might want to switch it up. If they use a mouse in the left hand, then obviously you'll have different keys. But you kind of just get the same idea. But today we'll just be talking about WASD because it's the very basic, most standard keys that everybody uses for movement because most people are right-handed. Alright, so without further ado, let's get started. The basic hand placement you want to have on the keyboard is to have your ring finger on the A key, your middle finger will be operating the W and S keys, and your index finger will be on the D key. Your pinky will be operating the other kind of functions on the left, like shift, tab maybe, control. Shift might be for sprint, control might be for crouch. It just depends on the game and what you have it bound to. In Doom, you're always sprinting, so you're not going to really use it for that. There's not really a crouch function either. Actually, I'll take that back. There is. I put mine on E though. But depends on what you want to do with it. I always generally have my crouch function on E, but again, that's something you don't really need in Doom 2016. But other games like Call of Duty, Battlefield games, the more modern titles, will have that because you get behind cover and stuff like that. So that's kind of how you want to have the setup for your main fingers, and then for your thumb, you want to have it on the space bar because that's going to be your jump, and generally that's default for most first-person shooters as well. The jump function is almost always on spacebar. Sometimes they'll put it on sprint, but that's kind of silly in my opinion. Spacebar should always be for jump. But it depends on what you like. You can always change the key bindings if you want in the settings for most games, if they're a good game anyways. But for now, we're just going to stick with the basics. Alright, now that we've moved to a little bit more spacious area in order to demonstrate this, we're going to be taking a look at the binary movement. So just forward, back, left, right, space for jump. So to move forward, you're going to take the middle finger and hit W. That's it. To move backward, middle finger, hit S. Whee! To move left, we're going to be taking the ring finger and hitting A. To move right, we're going to be taking the index finger and hit D. And that's it. Forward, W, back, S, left, A, right, D. You're going to want to generally keep your fingers on these keys at all time, with the exception of the middle finger because it can only hit W or S. You can't really hit them at the same time. And that's just going to be one of the default placement of your fingers and how you want to have that feeling, getting comfortable with it. You just always want to have those on those keys. You'll take them off generally to switch weapons and stuff like that, but usually you always want to have them on those WASD keys. Alright, now for the jump function, all you're going to do is take that big thumb that we all got and hit the space bar. Boop. That's it. Super complex, I know. But with Doom, you have actually a double jump function, so you can hit it twice and yeah, you can jump twice now. Double jump. That's what that's called. That's usually good for platforming, getting around obstacles and things like that, or reaching higher areas. So that is something you want to get familiar with too, but not all games have that. It's actually kind of rare lately in first-person shooters. Doom has it because Doom is awesome, but a lot of the more modern first-person shooters are a little bit dumbed down in that regard, and they don't really have a double jump. But for now, you know, it's always good to get used to that, because you never know when a game comes up like that you might want to try. Alright, now we're going to look at a bit more complex functions as far as movement. So we went with the WASD, WSAD, you know, forward, back, left, right. Now that's not going to be really plausible in the long run when you're playing games, especially complex games where a lot of movement and speed is required, especially when you're getting in chaotic fights and stuff like that in Doom 2016. So you're going to have to be doing a lot of more different movements. So what that means is you don't have to just hit the W, A, S, or D key. You can combine them in order to make a little bit more complex movements. So for instance, let's get back here. If I want to go over there, for example, but I want to continue facing ahead in order to shoot a target that's in front of me, then I can hit the W and A function at the same time, and I'm moving diagonally. Yeah. So, but I'm still keeping my viewport forward. Now, if I want to go back, I can hit the W the S and D key, and I will go diagonally back to the same place I was. See, not that complex, but very useful. Now, if I get on the other side, it's the same thing. If I hit the W and D key while looking forward, I'm going to be moving diagonally, and if I hit the A and S key, I'm going to be moving back diagonally. Now, this is very important when you're fighting bosses or just really strong enemies, and you need to constantly keep that forward look while you're shooting them, but you still need to be dodging their attacks and moving around and whatnot. So that's very important in fast-paced first-person shooters, and something that you should definitely get familiar with if you're looking to get into the genre. But it doesn't end there. We also have the ability to combine the movement function with the jump function. So as we did before, if you're just standing still and jumping in place with the spacebar, then all you're going to do is go up and down. But these are some fairly complex games. They have their own physics, they have their own momentum. So if we are to be running forward and then hit the spacebar, we're jumping forward. Going back, hit the spacebar, we're jumping backwards. Now you'll see that I actually cleared a couple feet there. So I jumped from probably right there, and so I cleared a couple feet. So if this was a gap or something, then obviously I would have jumped over it. Just like in real life, if you're moving, then you are going to be keeping up that momentum, and your character is going to be moving forward in the air. So that's very important when it comes to gameplay, because fights, especially with bosses, they might have like low attacks that go like a laser that shoots down below or something, or like some grenades they might throw at your feet. You got to jump over those bad boys, right? But it's not just for that and fighting and whatnot. It's also used for traversing the map. You know, as you can see, there's some high areas up here that are traversable. So if I were to go over here, I can't get up there, obviously. So hit that space bar. Still can't do it. Hit that space bar and hold it. Now I'm jumping up there. Hit that space bar again, jumping up over here. Now, this is where the double jump function also comes into play. So if I were to try to get over to there, and just by jumping, oh no, I didn't make it. All hope is lost. But if I were to use the double jump function, and now we're over here, and it's perfectly fine. Everybody's happy, and Santa Claus is coming to town. So just keep that in mind, because this is a very important function when it comes to first-person shooters that are fast-paced, like Doom 2016, and some other titles as well. And just third-person shooters as well, or third-person RPGs, anything where you're using WASD and spacebar to traverse the map and to dodge and things like that. So this is going to be a very important function, and it's really good to get used to it. So I would practice with that a lot. Okay, now that we pretty much covered all the basics of it, let's just give some examples of how we would use this in real time when traversing the maps. I'm not going to do combat right at this moment. We're just going to do the movement and controls of how all this works. So as you can see, I'm kind of moving in a circular pattern here. That's because all I'm doing is just taking my fingers and rotating around the WASD function. So now I'm going to hit W, D, S, A, W, D, S, A, and you're just moving around in a circle. You can go the opposite direction, W, A, S, D, W, A, S, D. And this is just something good to get used to. I'm not a pro player, so you know my movement's a little janky. You know, my mouse movement's pretty janky. I'm not the smoothest player, and that's fine because it's not a PvP game, just playing against the computer. But when we're putting this in real time, you know, you're going to have this nice fast-paced movement. So just jumping around the map, not really stopping, especially when it comes to Doom 2016, because it's just how the game is designed. You're just going to be constantly moving, hitting that W key. Now I'm hitting that A key. As you can see, I'm turning around this corner while keeping my cursor pointed forward. And that W key again, hitting that space bar, and just this is how you kind of just want to get the feel for things. Just constantly on the move, getting stuck, and then double jumping, using all these other functions, and just getting used to that smooth, fluid movement. There was a carpetist that I made earlier. And then, boom. Some games you can't really do that. You might die if you take too much fall damage. Not so much in Doom 2016. But this is just a really good way to just get used to movement. It's just find a little place like this in a game if you start a new first-person shooter and just traverse the map. Just go around, play with the controls, you know, after you made it safe, and just get a feel for how the movement is. Get a feel for how your fingers are on the keyboard. It all comes into play in the long run, and it's kind of like riding a bike. You know, once you get that muscle memory down, then it just becomes a part of who you are, and before you know it, you're going to be the next pro gamer over there at BlizzCon or E3 or wherever they do these tournaments that these kids do nowadays. Alright, so I guess that's it for this video. Hope you guys found it useful and learned something. I think I'll call it a day. Nice and short, sweet video. Hopefully I can keep that habit up, because some of my other ones were getting a little bit longer than I cared for. And it's all a learning process, as this is my first series, and I'm still kind of learning how to do the whole YouTube thing. Either way, this was a fun experience, so I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I guess I'll say good morning, afternoon, evening, and night, depending on where you are. This is Jarek Defiler, and I'm out.